Good morning. So I am about to go to the gym right now. And I've had this thought on my mind, and this actually goes great with what I'm trying to say here. Once you get something, if you don't do something when you get the inspiration to do it, you probably won't do it. So act on it. This morning, basically the words that are coming to my mind today, this is something I've been really a concept I've been really trying to put into words, and kind of connect the dots, with my near decade of career experience. A lot of business books, and I will say even spiritual books, have influenced this concept in my brain. But I want to talk about the concept of momentum, mental strength or mental energy, rest, and then trusting. And I would say trust God. That's where I come from. But then trust, whether that's the universe, your intuition, whatever that may be. Some books. So going into momentum, I don't think that's not a concept that's, I think, unfamiliar to anybody. We talk about the book that influenced me a lot was The Momentum Theorem by Dave Ramsey. But there are so many other books out there that talk about momentum, right? Basically, our brains, ever since our ancestors, right, we've evolved to be active. We've evolved to be moving. And the more momentum, or basically the more things that you can do to create mental momentum to become basically the peak production state, or basically call that, you might hear the term flow. That's a psychological theory. But momentum helps create flow in your life, puts you in a state of, again, productivity, a state of always thinking, right? Not an idle state. But you need that. And it's something that if you don't have momentum, I think that's what causes, and again, I'm not speaking to mental illness, but I have suffered from depression myself. And especially this year, as I have not, I think for many people that work in the corporate world or that have a full-time job, that creates momentum in your life. Especially if you're at a very high demand job, you have a lot to do, a lot of to-dos, right? To-dos, I did in my last video talked about how to-dos can be a bad thing. To-do lists can be, there's a trap of to-dos and thinking you're being productive when you're not, which is why I talk about having a plan and planning your days and your weeks to have, actually make sure you're not just mentally thinking you're being productive, but actually really making an impact and going into your 2 to 3 deliverables that you should be creating every day, every week. But those will help you create momentum. But I will say, so since I haven't had a job, and I've been doing job applications, networking, but that only does so many hours in a day. I was up at 6 a.m. For example, I was up at 6 a.m. this morning. My wife took my kids to school. I got my day started early, around 6:30, and just started doing job applications for about 3.5 hours. So 6 to 9:30. Now, after that, or actually, excuse me, before that, pull back a little bit. When my kids left, I've taken on some responsibilities, not because my wife's asked me to, but I've done a few things around the house, started being, stay-at-home dad in the sense of like Mr. Mom. Sorry, I don't mean to be sexist. But doing laundry, I folded all the laundry that was in our room and my wife had put there last night. I folded that laundry, put it away. My kids were in a rush this morning, so I made my kids' beds. I did the dishes. There was a bunch of dirty dishes in there from yesterday morning, and we had fish the day before. So I opened the dishwasher like, oh, it stinks so bad. So I did the dishes, started the dishwasher, loaded the dirty dishes that were around there. Also, I played scavenger. Did a little scavenger hunt this is just a thing for inside joke for me and my wife. But my wife, if you have a wife or a girlfriend or a significant other, my wife has this habit. She always likes water, having a cup of water, but she needs to have a cup by her, a cup of ice, a cup of water next to her whenever she's sitting down. And so she'll take a cup wherever she is, whether that's to our bed, and puts it on our nightstand, and then she'll go to the bathroom and she realizes she doesn't have a cup, she'll get another cup. And so she'll leave the cups where they are. So eventually we have 4 or 5 cups just literally upstairs alone, one or two, or sometimes multiple cups by our bed, 2 or 3 in the bathroom. There's one by the laundry room, just sitting on the dryer. And then there's like one we have a little coffee table next to our couch, and there's one there. So anyways, I did scavenger hunt, found all the dirty cups and put them in the dishwasher as well. So did the dishes, again, made my kids' beds. And why I'm illustrating this for you guys is that it made me feel productive, right? And again, I'm trying to dance on a line here because I don't believe in just busy to-dos, but at the same time, sometimes those little things that you need that can be done can help create a mental momentum, right? For you to move on to bigger tasks, right? I guess giving, little by little, right? Line upon line. So then I built up to doing my job applications, which again requires a lot of mental strength. It's not just, those little tasks, those to-dos, they don't require a lot of upper cognition, right? You don't need to actively think like, okay, depending on who you are, right? Where you are, well, I guess where I am at, I don't need to mentally think about, okay, I need to fold the shirt 1, 2, 3, okay, take 10 steps over to the drawer, put it away, pick up the clothes, put them into the washer, take the wet clothes, put them. You get my point. I'm not consciously thinking about these things. These things are habitual, but again, they do create momentum. These mental things, these tasks that are habitual, they can create that momentum, but they're not conscious. They're not upper cognition activities. And why I'm highlighting that is because then you move into that second. So the first thing is mental momentum. The next one is mental energy, right? Or mental strength. There's a lot of books out there that show us that we only have so much strength to give. Obviously, getting better and improving, I think, can help you with your mental strength and being more resilient and accomplishing more even when you don't want to. But even the highest level executives that I've read about, like even, for example, John Doerr, Steve Jobs, they talk about this mental strength that is in the day. And that's why even Steve Jobs was one of the probably biggest executors and planners ever, as far as identifying the one thing, the things that are the most productive, the most impactful things that he needs to get done so that he can ignore all the little to-dos. But my point is, once you get to these big events, these big things that you need to do, the one things, the 2 to 3 deliverables, understand, like, that's why it's so important to plan these, because once you get to them, you only have so much strength and eventually it will run out. Where eventually, yeah, you can keep going, but your performance really starts to decline, right? And you're not effective. You can keep going, but then you start getting distracted and your brain's trying to find dopamine and trying to find things to do, whether it's like looking outside at the window, maybe even in our day and age, scrolling on your phone, right? But getting into that, again, understand you want to create momentum, then moving into mental energy, that is a finite resource. And so you need to be very careful about how many tasks you're doing to get into flow, into a productive state, to reach peak performance, to do those big things that you need to do, your 2 to 3 deliverables every day. And that moves me into my next thing. Eventually you will hit a wall where, again, are you going to just keep pushing yourself bootstrapping? And I've learned now that bootstrapping is necessary sometimes, but if you keep doing it consistently over and over, your performance will decline, right? You will not be as productive, which goes into rest, right? And there's a lot of good business books about rest. And one, again, they're not coming to my mind right now. I'll maybe drop some in the description. But there's so many business books about rest and the importance of taking those rests. Now, I say the rest carefully because some people are like, well, that just sounds lazy. Like, I need to work 12 hours. I need to do this, and this, and work. Rest is for lazy people. And I think that's a sign of someone who is a little mentally immature. The reason, and forgive me, I'm not trying to offend anybody when I say that because that's where I'm coming from. I used to think these executives, these people, like I say, a CEO or a VP or a director, which I've gotten to that point in my career, they're working, they get there because they work so hard. They work longer hours than anybody. And I think to a point that can be true, but guys, nobody's working 12 hours a day. I told you I have a lot. So I did have a mentor. I talked about him in one of my other videos about coaching, but he kind of, I think it was coming from a good place, but I was telling him I was working really hard on job applications, and he was asking me to do some little things that at the end of the day we agreed were probably not the most productive. But he's like, I think he was trying to make me, I don't know, what I perceive is that he was trying to like pat my ego, like, Skylar, you're probably working so hard on applications, you're probably busting your butt 12 hours a day. And I could kind of sense a little bit of irony in his tone when he was saying it. It wasn't really a sincere place I think he was coming from. And I kind of called him out. I'm like, let's be honest, I'm not going to use this guy's name, but let's just say John. It's not his name, but John, let's just be honest. Like, nobody works 12 hours a day, right? And if you are, they're probably not productive hours. So my point is, getting back to this rest, figure out what that rest is. Now, where you're at in life, and I don't know your circumstances, what your role is. Again, that could be, I'm talking from a corporate perspective, but whether that's your responsibility is being a full-time parent, or, be a full-time volunteer, whatever activity you are involved in, you need to take breaks. You need to take rest. Now, one thing is a beautiful thing about our brains, right? Being a supercomputer, you can decrease your lag time, right? As you continue to reprogram it, you can get to a point, I think, where that rest can get shorter, like what you need before you need a little bit of a dopamine hit, right? And you can create those small rests, those periods where the point, like, you only need, this is actually going to a book. If you guys ever heard of the book Atomic Habits, I'm terrible with names of authors. I read so many dang books, I can never remember every author, but everyone knows the book Atomic Habits. Darren Hardy, there it is. So, but it's just habit stacking, and then basically making your rest a part of, when you're figuring out all the things you want to get done, you create habits around those things you want to get done every day, and making rest one of those habits that you do will again pay exponential dividends. And eventually you can make those rest periods shorter. So mental momentum, creating that momentum, understanding your mental energy is a finite resource, but then executing on the 2 to 3 deliverables that you need to. Maybe you did some of those little things that don't require a lot of upper cognition to create momentum. You move into this productive phase of your 2 to 3 deliverables every day. And then have your rest periods. Now, again, that doesn't need to just be one rest period. Again, this is based on your circumstance, who you are, but you need to figure out where those rests need to work in and how long you think you need. And the key is, again, continually try to get those to be shorter or maybe less sporadic. All right. Now, last thing, I want to go into my last word, which is trust. Again, I've always referenced my faith in my videos because I am just a faith-based person. But whether you trust in it, that's your intuition, your the universe, whatever higher power you believe in, trusting in everything is working for your good. Everything is working in the right time, in the way that it should, assuming that you are not just sitting idle and doing nothing, right? And again, I will reference a Bible verse. One of my favorites is actually my wife's favorite. I think it's a very well-known verse, but Proverbs 3, verses 3 through 5. Trust in the Lord with all thy heart. Again, trust in your intuition, trust in the universe, whatever that is. Trust in the Lord with all thy heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him. This is my faith, but acknowledge it. Acknowledge that it's there. Acknowledge that there's a higher power than yourself. All the ways acknowledge him, and it shall direct thy paths. And I want to, and that is something I am battling with currently. And I think we all have, depending on where we're at in life, right? I think that's the clincher. Trusting is really, really hard. It's basically a complete surrender, especially when you're working so hard and you're doing you're doing all these things, right? You're creating mental momentum. You're delivering on deliverables every day. you're taking these rest periods, trying to not to cause burnout within yourself. But then sometimes when we get in these habits and we're working and we're being productive and we're doing all this, we're like, why is it not happening, right? And we can call this is associated with patience, patience with the universe, patience with yourself, patience with God. But that ultimate surrender is very, very hard. But I do believe that it creates, for those of you that are Greek or Hebrew experts, bear with me, but I do like to study here and there. I think of modern day Stoicism, right? The Hebrews called it, in the Old Testament, or excuse me, the Greek, in the New Testament. The word I'm talking about temperance and soberness. Now, temperance, in a scriptural sense, is, so the word for temperance is nephalios, which is moderation. And also biblical scholars have talked about how it means not allowing to be free of passions, in terms of not letting your passions or your strong emotions govern you, control you, right? So self-control, if we're going to summarize it that way. Nephalios is an adjective. It describes so when someone's being a nephalios person, right, a temperate person, that's something that you are, right? Now, one of the roots of nephalios is nepho, which actually is the verb for soberness. So soberness is it's a verb, it's something that we do, right? As we become nephalios people, as we become temperate people, right? Not controlled by our emotions, self-disciplined people, again, God-fearing, right, where I'm coming from, we will naturally practice soberness, right? And so, and I told you guys I have my kids. I've tried to explain this concept of soberness, what it means to be sober to them. Soberness, and what we've come up with is it's being calm and collected in times of peak stress. All right. Again, calm and collected in times of peak stress. If you're a temperate person and you're striving, and I think everything that we just discussed today, again, creating mental momentum, understanding mental energy is finite, and creating deliverables and planning, being able to take rest, and then consciously trying to trust God or the universe or whatever you believe. But I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. I won't go too far in that, but trusting that, right? Going back, that's going to create soberness, right? That's going to help you be calm and collected in times of peak stress. And that's my invitation to anyone listening to this, today, to you guys. Try to be a sober person, calm and collected in times of peak stress. And this formula is something I think can help you to do that. Again, creating momentum. Don't sit idle, right? Create a plan, execute lots of little things, but then we'll move into momentum into higher conscious, conscious output, if we're going to put it that way. And then taking your rests and then trusting in that higher power, right? And your path will be led to wherever you're supposed to be for that time. Anyways, I gotta go to the gym. I got a lot to do today as well. This is one of my mental rests that I work into my routine is exercise. But have a great day, guys. We'll talk to you later.